Hello, welcome. My name is Adam to the Final Fantasy playlist, and in today's episode, we're talking all about the Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide is book 47 in the series, and it's the first release for 1992. The book was written by Paul Mason, and the cover illustration there was done by Alan Craddock, and all the internal illustrations were done by Terry Oakes. Now, the cover illustration is very Oriental inspired, very sort of Japanesey, samurai, very unusual, sort of really does sort of make you think, what is this story about? We'll go through that in a moment. The internal illustrations, I tell you, I love the way light is handled in this book. The way the shading for light is drawn, it's very, very cool. I haven't seen it displayed very often this way in a Fighting Fantasy book. The illustrations themselves are okay, but the shading of the lights is just, I really do like it. It really does give depth to these drawings. They're very well done, as is the cover. So thumbs up, guys, for the illustrations. Now, the book itself, okay, Paul Mason wrote this. There is a first for the Fighting Fantasy series, which after 47 books is pretty good. And we'll get into that a little bit in a moment. Let's read the internal cover and see what the story is about. With this book, there is no map. Sometimes they print a nice colourful map there, and there are no books on the back of it. But the internal bit does say, in the Isles of the Dawn, far to the east, mighty forces strive to gain power over the land. Wandering bands of mercenaries act as they please, looting, burning, and pillaging the once peaceful countryside. You are the child of a rice farming family, unskilled in combat but filled with dreams of heroism and glory. When mercenaries arrive in your village, you are flung into an adventure which tests your courage to the limits. Your father's dying wish is for you to learn the martial arts of the Bahu Monastery. But is this the best way to bring his killer to justice? As you grow and learn, you must face the horrors of the wide world beyond the village, a world of strange customs and malignant creatures. Many encounters await you, the sorcerers, monks, samurai, and malevolent spirits. Many fates could befall you, slavery, betrayal, imprisonment, or death. But in the end, it will be your courage, skill, and knowledge that will help you win the ultimate battle, to conquer the Crimson Tide of Revenge. I mean, that just sounds pretty cool, and I tell you, I know I refer a lot to the Skyrim game, as I recognize a lot of elements of gameplay in that game in these books, but the fact that you start off as a young teenager, again a first for the series, and you play through his life, but there are so many things that can happen to you along the way. It does really kind of sound like the making of that Skyrim game. This is an untold gem in the series. Like, this never made the top 10 list. It was never even nominated for the top 10 list. I've never even heard of people talking about this book. This is, for me, like an untapped gem. Like, I really enjoyed playing this. I'd never read it or even heard about it prior, like a week before making this video. Like, obviously I had it in my collection for like years, but I'd never touched it, never looked at it, just never got around to it because I'd never heard of it before, and nothing really inspired me to read it. And now that I've read it, this is like almost as good as Warlock of Firetop Mountain. It is that good. I didn't die in this book, right? This is so strange. I started off so you start off as a 13-year-old boy, and I'm going to get into the details of how you create your character sheet in a moment. But you go on a quest. Obviously, you've got a purpose for this adventure, and I failed in my purpose for the adventure because basically I decided to settle down and get married in a village and live out the rest of my life there, and never bothered with my quest after that. And I was like, oh right, okay, so that's that then. I didn't die, and it really, I suppose, wasn't the end of my story, but that was the end of the book. There was no other entry I could go on to, and I was like, right, okay, very interesting indeed. And that happened about, 30 decisions in maybe, so it was quite early in the adventure. So I'm quite intrigued about the story. I mean, the plot basically is your family gets killed by like a civil war that's raging, and then you must go on your quest to find out who killed your family and avenge them. And that's basically it. Now, the way you create your character sheet is a lot different, and I think where this book might fall or falter is there is a lot going on in the adventure sheet. If you just take a look at that adventure sheet, and you'll have to, you know, just look past all the somebody's written in there, but you've got your skill, and you've got your stamina, and you've got your luck, right? But you've also got two values: your temporary and your permanent. Okay, that you've got to keep track of, by the way. Okay. Then you've got your ferocity level. Okay, and that's going to change throughout the book. You've got your age, which of course will change. You've obviously got like money and equipment and provisions and stuff like that, and then some notes that you can make. But the cool thing is that your age also increases throughout the book. You'll be told, okay, it's now 2 years later, and you'll lose 2 points of ferocity, okay, for every time your age increases. So you might have a real good ferocity, but that's it. You know, once it hits 0, the book actually prompts you to turn to a page, and then whatever happens, you know, happens. You know. So what is it about this temporary and permanent skill? Well, you start the adventure off as a 13-year-old child. Okay. So you're not a warrior, but you do have some basic skills. And the way you have to roll for it is you only roll one die. Okay, I haven't got a dice any to hand, but you roll one die, and that is your skill score. There is no more adding 6 to the total, and that's your skill score. Same with your stamina. You roll 2 dice, and then that is your stamina, and that's your temporary or your initial skill and stamina and luck scores, right? And then, of course, as you go throughout the book, they're going to increase, okay? And they may even decrease. But you can now go above your skill level. Like if you rolled a 5 and you put 5, you could then suddenly find yourself with I think actually you put it in the permanent marker, but it can rise above it. Because obviously as you get older, you'll get stronger, more skillful, and stuff like that. Again, I found this book really fun. You know, it's a real grand adventure because it's stretched over a lot of time and probably, most likely, a lot of land. I didn't get to experience a lot of it because I decided to just shack up in a village and live out the rest of my years there, which was just like weird when I hit that. I was like, oh, okay, that's the end of the story. I definitely will return to this because I think it is an absolute treasure in the saga. It's a real fun read as well. So if you're a collector, definitely got to get it. But if you're just a fan of these books and you want to read more, I highly recommend this. It's probably now in my top 30 that I would choose out the series. It wasn't before. It reminded me a lot of the books that I write. I hadn't read this one. I only read it prior to this video. But when I was reading it, I recognized so much of my own work in the books that I write in this book. And I was like, oh my gosh, how freaky is that? So that's Crimson Tide, but let me know your thoughts and your adventures and how you got on with that book. And in next week's episode, we are going to go through Moonrunner, which of course is a part of a trilogy. So you can find out more about that in that video. And that's it for this video, guys. Take care, and I shall see you next week, adventurers. Bye-bye.